Hey guys, welcome back. We are back in the shop, and before we go in the house, which is where most of the video is going to take place, I know you guys are probably itching to get back out here in the shop and actually start working on this portion of the 27 John Deere D. Really quick, I wanted to talk about, I started disassembling the axles and the axle housings and kind of seeing how those come apart, and they're pretty simple, so that shouldn't take much to do that video, but this isn't about this stuff here. I still have a lot of cleaning left to do inside there, and my plan is, I think I'm going to send the rear case, the axle housings, and a couple other large items like the primary cover, or I'm sorry, primary cover, the first reduction gear cover. Here I'm talking like I'm working on a Harley here, but first reduction gear cover, and I want to send those off to have the insides sandblasted so that I can coat them with Gliptol and you know, just make sure it's done correctly, done nicely, because I want the insides of this to be as close to new or better than new as I can get them. So that's what we got going on out here. I haven't done any video on the disassembly of the axles and axle housings, simply because I have 3 more axle housings to tear down, and I want to choose the best pieces out of all of them. So when I probably get down to the last 2, I'll start filming the actual disassembly process and put that video out there. But this one was just kind of a trial to see how they come apart, because the manuals for these are not very good. It's pretty much a read and decipher, if you will, on how these things come apart. And the parts diagrams that are in them, as far as schematics go, they aren't like a normal INT manual. It's not an exploded view of how things come apart, or how the order of assembly, if you will. It's just like if you laid everything out on a table and took a picture of it. That's all you get. So there's really no good literature out there that shows how these things come apart and go together. So it's very much trial and error. I've been asking a lot of questions on Facebook groups, and people I know that are heavy into the John Deere Ds, like Hans Knudsen, Barrett Vanderbrink, Brian Patterson, Shannon Lee. There's a lot of people that have helped me get this far, and it's been a challenge and a learning process, but you know, that's kind of how it goes when you're working on 97-year-old equipment. So this video is about the governor and the parts that we had to make, or friends have helped make, and the issues that I ran into in converting some things over to a little bit newer style components. And I'll explain why we did that in the next part of this video. But let's head inside and we'll see what we got going on. Okay everyone, we are back in the basement, and we have all the governor pieces laid out here along with the fan shaft. And I'm going to first show you what we have to work with schematics in the manual. So this is all we have to go off of. It's basically a table layout of what we have for parts, and then the descriptions are listed below with the part numbers and their assigned item number in the list here. Not a whole lot of help, except for when you're looking for parts and what you need to assemble it correctly as far as part numbers go. So that doesn't help us that much. But the purpose of this video is to go around and kind of show you what all we had to do to get this governor to work, not only properly, but maybe to work a little bit better, or be a little bit more service friendly, if you will. So the first thing I want to talk about real quick is the bevel gear and the drive gear are pressed onto the governor shaft. We had to replace the governor shaft with another shaft because it was either send the shaft back to Squatch or send this one to Squatch and have him weld and turn new threads into it, or find a replacement shaft. So I opted to find a replacement shaft since Squatch already helped us out with the fan shaft and putting in new threads on the end of that. So went with a good used shaft. Big thank you to Alex for that. And got the gears pressed on, made new keys for everything. I resurfaced this sleeve. This sleeve is what slides against the governor weights on this end, on the drive end, and then on this end there's a thrust bearing, which is a new old stock thrust bearing that I found on Facebook through a gentleman. I believe I actually got that from Alex too, so another big thank you for that from Alex. And this is the end that the governor finger presses against, which is connected to the plunger, which is connected to the linkages, which is connected to the hand throttle. So this is essentially nothing is the same except for this driven gear. Everything here, well, this driven gear and this sliding sleeve that goes on here. But I resurfaced the front of this because there was grooves worn into that from the original governor weights, which is a perfect segue into the governor weights. These are the original governor weights, and they were terribly worn, as well as the holes in the embossments in the gear here. So what I attempted to do was we drilled out the weights and we milled or drilled out the gear on the mill at Rudy's to see if we could just put one size up and oversized pins. So these are a 5/16 pin that we actually made out of 5/16 bolts with really long shoulders on them. So I just turned the head down, rounded it off to make it look like a clevis pin, and then we just used the shoulder portion of the bolt as the pin, and I drilled a hole for a cotter pin. Originally, these were pins that were in place and then heated up on the ends and peened over to keep the pins in place. If you look at like a John Deere a John Deere B, 60, 70, a Model G, these pins have cotter pins in them to make it more serviceable or more easily serviceable. The D, or the early Ds, like I said, they use kind of a heat and smash type of method to get everything, to keep everything secure. So what I opted to do, because these pins that we made did not quite take out all of the egg shaping in these weights. This one isn't so bad. This one would probably be pretty good. But this one I think is quite a bit worse as far as the egg shape of the hole. Yeah, this one, I don't know if you can hear or see the ticking back and forth, but this hole is pretty worn still, pretty egg shaped. This top one is good, but I wanted to tighten things up just a little bit more. So these weights would probably be a good set for somebody if they wanted them. Okay, forget the cotter pins. So I actually contacted Alex again because he had a really nice set of original weights that were not egg shaped at all. So I got another set of pins, checked the fitment in the weights, and these have virtually zero play. So we'll get these slid in. Virtually zero play in these pins. So we're going to do that, and then to take up kind of some of the slack in the pins, we're just going to install a flat washer. Why don't I set the camera down so you guys can see? We're just going to set the camera, geez, it's getting late, guys. we are going to put flat washers, if I can hang on to them, over the ends of the pins. And I wanted these to be a tight fit on the pins, so I drilled out a smaller center hole, and I obtained a washer with a smaller center hole and drilled it out to exactly a 1/4 inch. And then we're going to put cotter pins on there, and there's just a little bit of play here, but not much. We're going to use cotter pins in there, and then what we did with the gear is we put brass bushings in here, 1/4 inch brass bushings, something similar to what you would use on a throttle shaft for a Zenith carburetor, like for an Allis-Chalmers B or something like that. So we've got brass bushings in here. We've got standard size pins with cotter pins and washers for that gear. So that all fits very nicely. And this should actually be great as far as wear goes, because if the bushings wear too far, we can just press out the bushings and install new bushings, and we don't have to mess with replacing the gear. So now that we got the weights and the pins taken care of, let's move on to the actuating lever and the shaft. This is a new shaft that we made out of tool steel, and this slides down through the actuating lever. There's a hole in the shaft that is pinned to the hole in the lever with a cotter pin. And then this shaft goes down into this embossment in the governor case, and there is zero play in there, which is good. It's a nice slip fit, but there's just a hair of wobble in it. Not much at all, just enough, I think, for heat expansion and everything else. So we had to make a new one of those. And Dave at Shop Time with Dave made us a new plunger, because the original plunger is severely worn and pitted, and what the plunger is for is it goes through the front of the governor case, which, here, we can move this over here. If you guys can see that. Oh, we also installed a new bushing in this front end of the governor case. So it goes through the governor case, just like that, and this goes in and out, and that is your actuating plunger that hooks on the actuating lever that presses on the shaft or the thrust bearing, which presses on the sleeve, which presses on or releases the governor weights. So huge thank you to Dave for helping us out with that piece. And I got a cotter pin stuck to it. So moving on from there, another problem that we discovered was, and we're not done with that governor shaft yet, another problem that we discovered was with this bearing carrier. This is a, geez, I can't even read on that one, a D830R. This is the bearing carrier for the side opposite of the magneto, because the magneto is driven off of this bevel gear side of the shaft. The opposite side here, which is on the flywheel side of the tractor, sits underneath this cover, and the bearing carrier is underneath that cover as well. So it would go bearing with the shaft coming through for the governor, and this caps it off over the end like this, if that makes sense. So here's the problem we have with this. I don't think you guys will be able to hear this, but if you can hear that, I'm wiggling the bearing back and forth, and I think what happened at some point in this thing's life is this bearing seized up and spun in this casting. And I think it wore away, because I can turn this whole race inside the casting, and there's just a little bit of wiggle in there. if you guys can hear that. So that's going to be a problem because I don't want this bearing to spin inside this housing, this carrier, as the governor's rotating. So, of course, this was already painted with Gliptol. Not a big deal because a little bit goes a long way. Alex also sent me this new old stock bearing carrier. So I have to clean this up and put some Gliptol on the back side. Get that all situated and ready to go. And then this portion is done. So let's see, what else? This entire governor setup has no leather or rubber seals in it at all. This is all sealed by felts. So I have all but one felt I need. So I have to order one more felt. And this is the front fan shaft bearing cap with felt. And the bearing would go behind this in the upper water pipe. So this really isn't a big concern. We just got to get another felt. Let's see. Moving on from there, let's go back to the bevel gear, the fan shaft pinion gear. These are both new old stock gears. This and this are the originals. I opted to replace these because the bevel gear is terribly worn. You can see, well, I can see, I'm not sure if you guys can see, but on the edge, the leading edge of the bevel gear, there's a significant step because these teeth are in such poor shape, such badly worn teeth that I wonder if you can see. You can see the chips taken out of the edge of the teeth there. These are very badly worn. The pinion gear isn't so bad. It's not great, but it ain't as bad as the bevel gear. So what I opted to do was upgrade. This is a D500 and this is a D501. What I opted to do is upgrade to the spiral cut or the helical cut gears, which are a much quieter system than straight cut bevel and pinion gears. These are a much quieter, I mean, you can hear it just in that, how much quieter. Now granted, these gears are severely wore, but these are a much quieter and updated version. This is the pinion gear for the fan shaft is a D1941, and what is, I don't even think I can read the part number on this one. Oh, there it is. I gotta turn it over here. D1185. So, that was no issue as far as the gears go. However, there was an issue with, okay, where did I put it? So, on the front side of this bevel gear, there's a large spacer, okay? This spacer is necessary because it spaces everything out on this end as far as the magneto drive that slides on the end of this. Now if you look at the pinion, or the bevel gear here, that has approximately we'll call it a 1/2 inch step. But if we look at this one, that has a step that's about 1 inch in length. This center collar. So what I didn't know was the updated gears require a larger spacer like we have here. So this is the original spacer and that is the new spacer, and you can see the clear difference in size because we are going, oh, I gotta pull this nut off if I'm gonna, so essentially this slides onto the end of the shaft in that fashion and takes up this excess room. So that is where we are at with all of this stuff. Essentially, we are waiting on a felt for the fan shaft, front bearing cap. But realistically, we could put the governor all together, but I don't want to do that quite yet, because in order to set the backlash on the governor gear to the pinion gear, we have to assemble the fan shaft as well. And in order to do that, I have to press this pinion gear onto the fan shaft, and I have to get the water pipe set up in this vicinity and try to kind of create a jig, if you will, to block everything up so that everything is sitting true and level the way that it sits on the tractor. And then we can set the backlash for the governor and fan shaft gear and make sure everything is kosher there. So until we get the felt for the fan shaft, we can't really move too much farther forward. So, I mean, I could put everything together in this, but I wanted to do it all in one video. So that's what the plan is. So as you can see, there's quite a bit of learning, quite a bit of trial and error, and quite a bit of making new parts for this that I was not expecting at all. So huge thanks to Dave at Shop Time with Dave, Alex Anderson, Hans Knudsen, Rudy for helping me figure this thing out, and trial and error with the governor weight pins and everything else. It's just been, this governor has been a real challenge for me. So that's all I've got. It's been a long ranting video, and I hope you guys kind of enjoyed seeing the pieces that we kind of had to make and revise and re-engineer, if you will. So that's going to do it for this video. I know we didn't do any assembly or anything, but that's going to be coming in the next video, because like I said, we want to do it all in one shot and just have everything set up and ready to go, so that when the tractor is in the final reassembly stage, we can just take this governor and fan shaft and bolt it on the tractor, hopefully without any issue at all. So that's all I've got. Thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for wrenching, kind of, and we'll see you in the next one. Take care.